Soren lingered in the hallway long enough to hear the elevator doors seal shut. The sound echoed in his chest. He should just leave. He should walk past the break room, pretend nothing happened, hand off the coffee later and let their ritual remain untouched by what he had just seen, by what he should not have seen. That should be the safe thing, the easy thing. But he rationalized, warlocks in the blind didn't get easy. They didn't get to live with all their truths laid bare. They learned to wear half masks, to bury half their lives, to measure every word and gesture for fear of exposure. Loneliness was the tax you paid for survival. And yet, he couldn't bring himself to add another brick to that wall. Not with her. He exhaled, squared his shoulders, and pushed the door open. The click of it closing behind him felt louder than it should have. "Was that your little brother?" he asked, setting her coffee down in front of her with deliberate casualness. He did his best to make his voice come out light. Callie looked up at him, her face lined with exhaustion. "Yeah." Awkward silence stretched between them. She curled her hands around the paper cup, and with a subtle flex of her will, steam began to curl from the lid once more. Her eyes flicked to him. "It's okay. You don't have to pretend you don't know. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." But she shook her head. "No, it actually feels good to get caught. Pretending to be normal is exhausting." They sat across from one another at the table, the fluorescent light buzzing faintly overhead. Soren felt the weight of her gaze on his hands. He looked down at them, plain and unremarkable to the world at large, but now he knew what she saw. "You can see it?" he asked quietly. Callie's nod was slow, almost reluctant. "Your seal needs maintenance." "Yeah," he admitted, flexing his fingers around the paper cup. "It's been a while." The silence after that was long, broken only by the faint hum of the vending machine and the soft sounds of her sipping hot coffee. Soren held his cold drink, untouched. Across from him, steam coiled from hers, rising like a secret too stubborn to stay hidden. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but unflinching. "It's okay. You can ask me." He met her eyes. "What you said just now, was that true? Or were you just playing the good older sister and trying to teach a lesson?" Callie smiled faintly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. A little of both. Jace needs to understand he can't just throw power around." She paused, her fingers caressing the curves of the cup. "But also, it's true. I don't have a seal." The words landed like a stone dropped in still water, sending ripples through Soren's thoughts. He blinked. "No seal." Memories flickered through his mind like a movie reel in high speed. The markings, the rites, the pain. How could she? "Soren," Juno's voice cut through the fog. "Huh?" He looked up, jarred out of the spiral, focusing on Juno's worried expression. The room had gone quiet. Conversations had fizzled out. Even Benison had muted the TV. The group's attention had completely shifted to Soren, their eyes heavy with concern. They all knew his work with severely ill children was emotionally draining. Death was a constant part of his life, even when he was with them. He worked hard to pretend he wasn't bothered by young lives ending before they barely had a chance to begin. Even Art, who worked in internal medicine, knew Soren rarely displayed this kind of tension unless something truly weighed on him. But what surprised everyone most was Gina, usually vapid, self-absorbed, detached. As the first one to show concern, I was now watching Soren intensely with an expression that was unusually attentive. Alvin leaned forward, steadying his palms on the kitchen counter, his voice cutting gently through the quiet. "Did something happen?" "What? No, it's nothing like that." Soren knew his friends were not convinced. He watched as their eyes shifted around the room. Gino's forehead wrinkled, and Sabina's lips pressed into a thin line. "You sure?" Benison asked, crossing his arms. "Yes, sorry. I was just thinking about something." "What?" Sabina asked, reaching for the bottle of red wine to top off her glass. "Nothing, really." Soren's eyes swept across the room, trying to look as though he was making eye contact, but never settling on anyone's gaze. Part of him worried that if he locked eyes with someone, they might see through him, and somehow pull out the secret he'd been turning over in his mind. Art, quick to interpret, or misinterpret, leaned forward in his chair, his eyes sparkling. "Ah, is this about that girl?" "What girl?" Bianca asked, her voice carrying curiosity and something deeper. Beneath her concern for Soren was her own secret, unspoken interest in him. Art grinned knowingly. "Callie, that returning resident you've had your eye on? You've been spending your late nights just talking over coffee." He added talking with air quotes and a smirk on his face. Soren shot him a sharp look. "How do you know about that?" Art's smug grin widened. "I'm in good with the nurses. They tell me everything." Bianca rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You're just as bad as Gino." No, I'm better than Gino." Bianca crossed her arms. "Womanizing is womanizing, Art. Older women, younger women, it makes no difference." Sabine nodded in agreement. Stefania leaned back in her armchair, stretching her legs out. "You said returning resident. I'm assuming there's a story there?" Art nodded. It was a fucking fiasco. 3 years ago, they found out her supervising doctor was a real angel of death. The 3 surgical fellows training under him got swept up in the scandal. "Callie was one of them?" Sabine asked. "Yeah, but she was lucky." "How so?" Stefania asked. "Lucky how?" Bianca pressed. Art rose and crossed to the kitchen to grab another beer from the fridge. "You wouldn't know it to look at her, because she has that salt-of-the-earth attitude, but her family is rich. I'm talking the stuff of Gino's wet dreams. Old money bankroll rich." He crossed back to the armchair, opening the beer by twisting the metal cap against his forearm, continuing as he sank into the seat cushions. "So her family was able to hire one of those expensive lawyers." Albin's eyes shifted upward as if he was searching his brain for information. "Wait, I think I remember that. Was that hospital malpractice case that Solomon Kane handled a few years ago?" "Yep," Art confirmed. A high-pitched whistle came from Gino. "Why would you want to get involved with someone like that?" Sabine asked sharply. "If she's a bad doctor who kills people." Gino cut her off. "Do you have any idea who Solomon Kane is?" Sabine shook her head. "No." Gino leaned back, eyes sharp. "Solomon Kane isn't just rich. He's a powerful warlock. His firm only handles cases it knows it can win, and Kane only personally takes warlock clients." A silence settled over the room as the words sank in. "Wait, she's a warlock?" Stefania asked. "Are you sure?" Bianca interjected. "What if she's just a witch, or even a conjurer?" "Does it matter?" Sabine pressed. "If she's a bad doctor who hurts patients." Before Soren could speak, Art cut in sharply. "I never said Callie was a bad doctor. I said her supervising doctor was an angel of death, and the 3 residents training under him got caught up in the scandal. Callie was lucky because her family has money, the kind of money that can actually fight a team of top lawyers from a wealthy hospital. If she were anyone else, she'd have had her whole life ruined." Alvin, taking care to focus on the conversation back on Soren, locked eyes with his friend. "So?" Soren sighed and offered a wry smile. He didn't want to tell them too much, but he needed to say something before Art filled their heads with all kinds of mostly untrue hospital gossip. "We're old friends," he began. "Callie and I met on our first day of clinical rotations. We studied together, stressed over cases together, wiped each other's tears when we lost our first patients. She was amazing. Watching her work, it was like watching a hero on their rise to defeat the demon lord." There was a collective groan from the group, half teasing, half exasperated, as Soren's Nord quality showed in that literary reference. He ignored them and continued. "She wasn't just talented," he said softly. "Steady hands, a quick mind, and the confidence every surgeon needs. But she also wasn't arrogant in the way people complain surgeons tend to be. Standing in her shadow had me doubting myself. But when the proverbial stairway of her future came crashing down, it was hard to watch. I knew better than anyone how hard she worked to earn her place at that hospital. To see her have to leave in disgrace, it was painful." He paused, looking down at his hands. "The media made her the poster child for the case. She couldn't even step outside without reporters on her heels. And at the same time, there was drama behind the scenes with her family. We lost touch. When I heard she was coming back to the hospital," he gave a quiet shrug. "Anyway, my point is, it's not like Art makes it sound. We're just friends, catching up, that's all." The subtle flush creeping across his cheeks was all the confirmation the group needed. Sabina glanced at him and gave him the side eye, her voice light but skeptical. Yeah, okay. Her tone said more than her words. She wasn't convinced. Alvin, still watching closely, gave Soren a slow nod. He wanted to press for more, but he knew Soren wouldn't give away anything he wasn't ready to share. Gino, still lounging on the couch, smirked faintly and summed up what the rest of them were thinking. Just friends, huh? Soren shot him a look but said nothing. Art leaned back in his chair and cocked an eyebrow in Soren's direction. We're friends, Soren, and you have never once bought me one of those fancy coffee things from that shop on the corner. His tone dripped with sarcasm. Soren just shrugged. It's not my fault our schedules don't overlap. Art smirked and took a long sip of his beer as if he'd just won some private victory. Yeah, whatever. Just keep telling yourself that. Bianca rolled her eyes and shifted on the couch, brushing a strand of her hair back over her shoulder. You're clearly not as indifferent about her as you want us to think. Soren's expression tightened for a moment before he gave a small shrug. Maybe I care more than I let on, but it doesn't change anything. Sabine leaned forward, resting her elbows on the counter, eyes fixed on him. Careful, Soren. People don't like it when you try to walk both sides of the line. Eventually, you have to choose which side you're on. Alvin set his glass down with a soft clink. So, what's the line this time? Work? Friendship? Something else? Soren met Alvin's gaze and let out a quiet sigh. She's still a resident. I'm one of her supervising doctors. For now, that's the line.